Hello. How are we doing today, everybody? Spam in the chat. Bells. I want to see some bells spamming in the chat because Christopher Bell has won his third straight race. Do we sound good? We all good? How are we doing, everybody? Welcome into the post-race show for Phoenix, the 2025 Shriners Children's 500. And you know what? I've seen people ask. I got to give it to you. I'm going to make sure it doesn't loop over and over again. But there you go. Ring the bell twice, 3 times, 3 in a row for Christopher Bell. The first to do it. Fox was wrong. First to do it since Kyle Larson in 2021. Say what you want about the finishes. Say what you want about the previous races. Bell is on one this year. And you know what? He had to fight for it. He definitely had to fight for it at the end there. Not a green-white checker by technicality. They did finish it under regulation. The second closest finish in Phoenix history. First closest going between Kevin Harvick and Carl Edwards back, I believe, in 2016. 3-wide finish, technically. Denny Hamlin finishes 0.049 seconds back. Larson 0.097. Man. I mean, yep. Ring the bell. It is Bell's year right now that he is just on one. Already 3 victories on the season. We will read those super chats at the conclusion of talking about the race itself. I want to talk though first about the finishing order of this race. So let's go through it. Also, yes, there's more bells and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here about Bell, but one more thing I have to have as a Michael McDowell fan. Fastest lap in the race, McDowell supremacy back in 27th. Let's go through the finishing order of this race, and then we will talk point by point about Bell, about the option tires, about some of the strategy and the racing itself, the big wreck, some of the different mistakes we saw, but let's go through starting out the finishing order of the 2025 Shriners Children's 500. Christopher Bell wins over Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson third. Fourth is Josh Berry with a really nice run today. He gets just in front of Chris Buescher with a 5th place run. William Byron able to have a bit of a comeback to 6th. 7th, Alex Bowman at a track he's not very good at historically outside of his first start with Hendrick Motorsports there in the 88. Kyle Busch, an 8th place run, another solid run for Rowdy to start the year. Zane Smith, 9th in that front row machine. Chase Elliott comes back up for a top 10. He finishes 10th. Then he got Ross Chastain 11th. 12th is Austin Dillon. Logano. Sorry, I wrote down the wrong one. Double 2. Logano with the 13th place finish. John Hunter Nemechek finishes 14th. 15th, Ryan Preece. 16th, Ty Dillon, who could have probably had a top 5 or top 10 run today had he not had issues in the pits. Todd Gilliland with a 17th place run. Then Eric Jones, Austin Cindric, and Tyler Reddick, the top 20, and those on the lead lap. 1 lap down for 21st place, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and AJ Allmendinger in 22nd. 4 down for Daniel Suarez in 23rd. Cody Ware comes home 6 laps down with a 24th place run. Out of the race for Ty Gibbs right at the end, 25th. 9 laps down for Noah Gragson in 26th. 27th, Michael McDowell, 22 laps down. Everybody else from this point on is out of the race. Ryan Blaney, 28th. Blew an engine. Already was kind of a mediocre day for Phoenix standards for him, even though he was running like 7th or so when he blew up. Bubba Wallace comes home 29th. He ran around the top 10 today. 30th place finish off attrition for Catherine Legg. Then the victims of the big wreck. We had SVG 31st, 32nd, Cole Custer, 33rd, Brad Keselowski, 34th, Chase Briscoe, Riley Herbst in the 36th spot, or 35th spot, I should say. 36th for Justin Haley, and Carson Hocevar last, according to what Fox had. NASCAR's website and Fox actually did not match up the finishing orders, which is kind of weird. But that is your finishing order. We're going to play that on the bottom. I probably spelled somebody's name wrong. So let me know if that is the case. And again, we'll read those super chats at the conclusion of talking about the big points of the race. We'll talk a bit more about Bell here. And I'm going to put a poll up here right now because Bell has the opportunity next week at Las Vegas at a track he's pretty good at. He has the opportunity to join a very historic group. So I'm going to start a poll. Will Bell win 4 in a row? And I think it's a yes or no. It's a pretty good poll question. Poll is up in the chat. Poll is also on the community tab for those who are wondering as well for the race itself. But I got to say, Christopher Bell very well could have 5 wins in a row after it's all said and done. I mean, you look at the schedule and it lines up really well for him, but it is hard to do it in NASCAR. Las Vegas, really good track for him, and Homestead, really good track for him. That team has been on it when it comes to the 1.5 mile racetracks. If he is able to win 4 in a row, because with winning 3 in a row, I don't have the list on me, but he joins a list of, I think, 29 or so drivers who have done that in their career, which it is the best of the best to win 3 in a row. I mean, it's every mainline Hall of Famer and champion you can think of, he would join that list. He's won it at Las Vegas before. He's run really well there in the past. Same with Homestead coming up. So I'm just saying, you got to be on watch for Bell on that one. If he wins 5 in a row, he'd be the only person in modern NASCAR history since 72 to do it. That's jumping a bit ahead, though. Looking at the voting, you guys are damn near 50-50 right now. We're going to leave that up for a little bit. You're damn near 50-50, though, on Bell. I mean, he's elite. Anyone who would question it coming into the year, I get, a super speedway. Yeah, you might question it, but a road course, very skill-based, talent-based, team-based. Same with Phoenix. Say what you want about Phoenix overall. It's a real race. This is not like another super speedway where it's one of those fake races or whatever, like people like to say. I think he's for real this year. I thought he was going to be one of the top guys to beat, and so far, so good for him. I'm interested to see, though, as it gets later in the year when it comes to him. The other end, though, before we get even to the option tires, I want you out of 10 in the chat to give me your rating for this race. Was it the best race you ever seen? Worst race you ever seen? Was it the best Phoenix race you've ever seen? Personally, I see the first one to jump on in there, Marky Mark, with a 7. I say this with Phoenix. It is never going to produce a 10 out of 10 race, in my opinion. But if it can produce 7s or so, I'm good with it. And for the most part today, for the most part of the race, I thought was a 6 out of 10 race. I thought it was a really decent race. I thought the tire strategy added a lot to it. I see some in here saying, don't let the finish fool you. I get that, but the strategy itself kept me invested in it. That you could see guys moving up and down through the pack at different points. It got a little dull, I will say, in the final stage before a lot of the wrecks started happening. You really were definitely at that point waiting for the strategy to kick in, see who had what and whatnot. It looked like Bell was far and away going to have it, but I think the finish, to me, bumps it up to a 7. I actually thought it was a pretty good race. I think, and forgive me if I have forgotten any like banger Phoenix race, but this is the best Phoenix race I think we've had in a while. I get it's not saying much. This would be probably a good race or a decent race at 1.5 miles nowadays with the next gen. Definitely the best one of the next gen era. I'll say that. I mean, I think that NASCAR and Goodyear making the changes, having the option tire was a great move, because had it not been, and we'd just been with one flat tire, no pun intended, for a lot of the guys out there, we probably would have had another 3 or 4 out of 10 day. Nothing of value would have happened when it came to the racing, really. The strategy wouldn't have had anything to it. It would have been an upfront and forward race like that. Now, I will say, let's see. Yeah, I mean, definitely the best finish since the Harvick Edwards one. I will definitely give you that. The thing is, I don't remember how good the race itself was. I will fully admit I was a biased Dale Jr. fan on that one. So like he was running up front, and I'm just, every race he ran up front was good. Doesn't matter how bad it actually was. But definitely the most memorable, I will say, since then. Let's talk about the option tire, though. I think that NASCAR, and especially now Goodyear has had to shoulder a lot of the problems NASCAR has created with this car. We can rag on Goodyear a lot, and they've earned it a lot. But I think, though, that the next gen is, I think, solely a NASCAR issue. It was rushed to begin with, struggles at a lot of these tracks. Now, granted, Phoenix is just going to struggle with any car. It doesn't matter what series or car you have, it's going to struggle. But they've had to fix a lot of the issues. And for the most part, they've done a good job. They're probably going to overstep at some point. We're going to have a race with a ton of blowouts. We had it long into a run this time, which I don't mind, because that's old school NASCAR. Save your stuff. And a lot of those blowouts were just brakes blowing out, which is a next gen NASCAR issue all over again. I like that we fully embrace doing this, though. For the longest time, I wasn't too crazy about having option tires as something to try, just because I like having like one flat set of rules for the most part. But it made the racing better. I mean, even people who said it was a 4 out of 10 were saying it still was better because of that. And I think moving forward, in all honesty, I think the option tire should be the main short track and like 1 mile that like tire. It should be this tire compound, because I think this tire compound really helped make this race way better than it should have been. The softer tires have been better for Martinsville. We saw last year, especially. Everyone forgets that Martinsville race was actually a really damn good race until all the controversy happened. The racing itself was actually really fun. Like I have the schedule pulled up again, and the next couple of weeks, Vegas 1.5 mile track and Homestead 1.5 mile track, both of those are going to have really good races. Like at the floor, at the minimum, I think they're going to be good races. Martinsville, I'm excited for again. Darlington, going to be a good race. Bristol, I question. Last year was an anomaly. The night race was not very good, even without, take out the domination factor of it. So basically every race through about the first week of April, I'm actually looking forward to. And that Martinsville one especially is because of Goodyear. My idea, I think, moving forward, because a lot of people are like, well, for the finale, let's have the option tire, maybe have the teams get 3 sets for it. And I'd say, let's make this the main tire. The guys going for the championship and everybody else at the end of the year has to save their stuff, has to be the best they can be on all aspects. And then have another option tire, if they can test it in enough time and produce it in enough time, that's even softer. If they can't make that happen with any noticeable difference, I get that. This will suffice. Even, I think even the racing when everybody was on the option tires for the most part was actually better than the prime tire that they had beforehand. So I'm all for it. Like I am all for just getting aggressive on this. And if Goodyear finds the line, they find the line. I want them to do this at more tracks. I want this to be the option they go with, no pun intended there either, for every kind of short track race and really every race that's like smaller than a Nashville or a Darlington. Basically anything smaller than 1.3 miles, let's use this tire or a tire compound like it and get aggressive with it, because this might make the racing there good. The road course racing, I think, has gotten better. I thought Coda last week was pretty good. There were some dull points for sure, but the finish was really good. A lot of the racing throughout was actually pretty good in that one too. And if you can fix the majority of the short track racing and the road course racing, the biggest problem left is the tracks like Phoenix and other tracks like that, like Texas, that are just historically bad racetracks. And then the super speedway racing. Even then, you have the Atlanta's pretty good. It's just Daytona and Talladega. So, we're going to have duds this year. I would not be surprised if the finale, regardless of the tire, is a boring, dull race. We're going to have dull races. Bristol might be that way. Hell, Martinsville in the spring might be that way, even after what I just said. But it is, I think, I think we are seeing steps in the right direction. I think there is a lot of positives to be taken from this. If you didn't like this race, I get it, but I like the strategy aspect of it. So you know, I get it. The racing itself was not great. Phoenix standards, I thought pretty good. I thought we actually had some competitive battles for Phoenix standards. Um, I just think Phoenix, you get capped off at about a 7 or an 8 being the best possible you can get in all things considered. And I think today we got about the best possible we could get, all things considered. Looking at some of the others through here, shout out to Josh Berry. That 21 team has been MIA since Matt DiBenedetto was out of it, and you had Harrison Burton jump in. I think that this is proof in some ways. It's not the car. Don't get me wrong. Wood Brothers, I don't think is going to be a championship level team anytime soon, unless Roger likes to really fund a lot of stuff for them to get better. But I think all things considered, this is a good improvement. This race here is a good improvement, and this team was running top 10, top 5. Now, of course, once you had the options and you got yourself track position, as long as you didn't make a catastrophic mistake or a caution come out when you were going down pit road, you'd be up there. But I got to say, so far, 4 races in, the Wood Brothers moving on from Harrison Burton and bringing Josh Berry in. We've seen Berry be pretty good at the super speedways, which those Fords are always going to be good at the super speedways. Won last year with Harrison Burton at Daytona, but this race especially. And then you've seen the improvement that Harrison Burton for the most part has had Xfinity wise and kind of just getting his feet back underneath him. 4 races in, small sample size, not much when it comes to real racetracks, as a lot of people would say. I think it's a beneficial move for all parties involved so far. I'm going to end the poll here. 53% of you don't think Bell will win 3 in a row or 4 in a row. He won 3 in a row today. But 47% of you say, yes, he's going to win next week. And also good on you, chat. You picked for NWP. You picked Christopher Bell to get the win. So I believe that means you take the pick points lead. It's going to be close all year, but good on you for that one too. And I'll tell you this too. We'll be live on this channel this week. We're gonna have plenty to talk about with it. Some of the other things to talk about today. Early on in this race, Joey Logano, right at the start, I believe on the second restart, the first restart technically after the start, right? No, second restart, because there was a quick yellow. The 22 goes onto the yellow line, under the yellow line on the restart before getting to the start finish line. That's been something that's been a black and white rule laid out by NASCAR. You know, I get Clint Boyer, that's ticky tack. That shouldn't be called. But that's one of the few black and white rules, and I'm glad NASCAR doesn't have leeway with it. Don't get me wrong. It was very close, and they did not have a good camera angle to show of it. I think the best one was the blimp cam. But that move ruined his race. And that's obvious. Like, yeah, of course, he got a penalty, almost went a lap down the first stage. Of course, that's going to kind of ruin his race. But he had to use a set of those option tires in order to get back up there with the leaders, get higher up in the running order in order to just to preserve some sort of lead lap finish. And I think he had a pretty decent car. I don't think he had a winning car, but I also don't think he had, where'd he finish here? 13th. I don't think he had a 13th place car today. I think he had a better than 13th place car today. And he's going to lose out in points there. This to me was one of those places, and I get, yes, he won Las Vegas last year on a fuel mileage deal. Paul Wolf, Joey Logano, very good at that. So he can very well just win next week. But I think that this was one of those tracks, flat, short track, that was a great opportunity for him to get a win. And, to let it slip through like that is a very rough deal when it comes to that 22 team, because I think they're going to be one of those teams that's kind of on that cut line battle. They haven't had the finishes. They've gotten the stage points so far this year. Then that's helped preserve them being up front, is the stage points that they've gotten in Daytona and Atlanta. and some of the strategy moves, at Code, I believe. But only for so long can we have somebody keep winning races over and over again. For so long can we only have the favorites winning with how NASCAR is, how close everything is today, and how many chances teams take, and how many times we don't finish with 20 on the lead lap. We usually have 25, 30, and many people can take different chances and end up getting into a win, just landing into a win. I think that 22 team, this is one they're going to kick themselves on, even just for a good finish. Those added points, he probably could have got 7 or 8 spots higher today had it not been for having to use that extra. And I'll say this with using that set, they made the best out of a bad situation. They made it the best out of a bad situation today. So that's just something to look at. Ryan Preece, he shined right off the bat. He was the one who proved to us that these tires could actually work to get you up front and race up towards the front. So there is, shout out to him. Top 15 finish on the day as well for Ryan Preece. Looking through some of my notes too. I swear this is like, for those who know, I like have the running order or the finishing order up top and then like notes. And usually for Phoenix races, it's like, maybe to here. And this whole thing here is the final stage. Like there's actually a lot going on. This is definitely one of those races you had to follow the entire time for it. Preece was a rocket on those tires when nobody else was on those tires, but he was able to stay up towards the front. And I think that's promising for somebody like him. Yes, the famous notes. Yeah, the notepads. Looking at some of the others, let's talk about the big crash that happened today. I believe it was stage 2? Was it stage 2? Yes. We got back restart lap 99. The 20 got the jump, but they're 4 and 5 wide through the pack. And I had put, for those of you who got in here, I put the stream up for people to come hang out in the chat at the end of the first stage. I had put right before this restart, like, we're kind of due at Phoenix for like a track blocker big one in Cup. Like we've had it in Xfinity, we've seen it in trucks and stuff, but we have not had it in the Cup Series for a long time. I'd have to think like probably 2017, 18, somewhere in there, like one of the Gen 6 years. Ty Gibbs is on the bottom of 4 wide, gets loose, and just sends the field into oblivion. There were, I believe, 12 cars involved in this crash, including Chase Briscoe, who had just gotten all of his points back. And a lot of us were very confident, like, man, he's going to be really good. I know 2011 did, but there was one that was on the back stretch. I remember it involved Kurt Busch that had a ton of people. If you're talking like major big ones, it's 2011. But there was a big one in the Gen 6 years that was about the scale of this one. That one in 2011 was like 20 cars or something crazy like that. I know the one you're talking about. I'm just telling you, you can go back. And the 19 caught air, as DC United pointed out. 19 caught air, and that took out guys like Hocevar, Haley, Herbst, Briscoe, Keselowski, SVG, Custer. Noah Gragson got a lot in that. That's why he finished 9 laps down. 2018 fall. Okay. This is the thing. I don't remember years like that because I just... I don't remember half the crap I ate for dinner last night, let alone something that happened 7, 8 years ago. So good for you guys having a better memory than me. But that was that. I mean, that was a huge mistake on his part. And so far this year, I mean, Gibbs, he finished 25th today, and it's just been an awful season. Like, I'm going to look on my end really quick. Coming into this race, Ty Gibbs, when you took out all the part-timers and guys that aren't competing, when it comes to the 36 full-time entries, Ty Gibbs came into the race today, 42 points out of the playoff cut line, 35th in the standings, and he finishes 25th on the day. And if I'm not mistaken, he didn't get any stage points. The only reason he finished 25th was attrition. The dude was running like 35th at different times today. So that team, that 54 team's been off since about the middle of last year and then fell off a cliff at the end of last year. And they are still at the bottom of the Grand Canyon right now, completely lost. Like I thought that maybe it was just, kind of a sophomore slump kind of deal, or, something that they could kind of dig out of with an off season to look at it. This team is just out to lunch right now. And you look at Bell, he's been up towards the front, obviously. You look at Hamlin, of course. Denny Hamlin. Until he falls off, he's going to be expected to be good. Briscoe is like somewhere in the middle, I would say, right now. Again, 4 races, not a big sample size. Super speedway isn't added in and all that. But Gibbs this year, luck hasn't been good. I mean, from Bowman Gray on this year, it's just been bad all around. Something else that was bad all around was Catherine Legg's day. There was a lot of talk about her being in the race. The first one, single car spin in the back, doesn't look good, but we've seen a lot of people do that before. So it's like, I think that one's forgivable. It was the second crash that ended up taking Suarez out, where I nearly took Blaney out. At that point, you kind of got to, just call it as it is. I mean, it was not good. And being in a live fast car, she was not going to run up towards the front at any point. I think the best she would run off of speed today is probably like 35th. That's just the caliber of car she was in. But it's going to keep fueling a lot of the conversation, like what drivers should be allowed to be in with what experience. I saw people talking about, her being in, but then somebody like Jennifer Jo Cobb back in the day not being let in, or Mike Wallace not being let in. You had Elio Castroneves who was let in, and people had that whole conversation. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to have that conversation all over again about Catherine Legg this week. Suarez really didn't have, I think Suarez didn't really have anywhere to go. He needed the good run today because he was running top 10 when that happened. And that is a huge hit to his season already. And we already have talked about it with Connor Zilic on the way up. He's somebody that's just going to be pretty set and primed to be in a Cup seat. There's no guarantee he's going to be in Cup again this year. But it's kind of written on the wall that Suarez is a dead man walking at Trackhouse. And he came into this race 29th in the points, 33 back, tied with Ryan Preece, who will surely be ahead of him. Same as Zane Smith, who was right behind him. Josh Berry, who was right behind him. Berry needed a good run. Smith needed a good run. Cindric, after the penalty, needed a good run. Really didn't get it. He finished, where did he finish? 19th. I could probably just look at my ticker as it goes by, but where's the fun in that? Not the kind of run that Suarez needed. I mean, he's a lot of these guys who don't run that well anyways and are trapped back there already 30, 40, 50 points back. I'd say they're in must win already. And it's crazy to say that 4 races into the year, but you're not going to make up those points once we start having those upset guys come in. And I know it's really early to talk about all that, but for a lot of these guys, this is going to define their season. This is going to define their futures in a lot of ways. I mean, I just talked about, Suarez. Bubba Wallace had the brakes go out today. A pretty decent start, probably the best, I would say, first 3 race start, and looking to be 4 race start because he was competing for a top 10 start to his career. Wiped out with that. The brakes going out was really what caused a lot of these issues too. Gibbs, again, his bad day just continued with that, and that's how it ended. But you're already starting to see that separation, because I mentioned it this past week on NWP that once you get past like Bristol, Darlington, Talladega, like once you get into like May and you start approaching the Coke 600, that's when you know pretty much where everybody's going to compete for the rest of the summer, all the way until September. Who's going to be the fast guys who are going to be the favorites to win each week. The ones that points-wise should be relatively decent as long as nothing happens. The guys who are going to be on that cut line the whole time. And the guys who are going to be must-win. And we're already seeing that separation this early on. Power steering was an issue. Tyler Reddick today was one of the top guys. This is one of his best tracks. Reddick finishes 20th, even with better tires at the end, because his power steering went out. They tried to fix it, but there was nothing they really could do. That they were already screwed that far back. You talk about other people with bad luck. Chase Elliott, William Byron, both of them went into the pits when before the caution came out, got trapped a lap down, had to take the wave around, and from there they were on catch-up mode the rest of the way. Byron luckily got to 6th, and Elliott, who had really been nowhere all day, got back to 10th on that last restart. That's, good for them, obviously. But William Byron could have been right up there competing for the win. I mean, I'd say he had the best car of the day outside of the 20. Chase Elliott, again, making the best out of nothing. Good on him. You would not think in the way that a lot of this race went that all 4 Hendrick cars finished in the top 10. 3rd for Larson, 6th for Byron. Again, shout out to Alex Bowman, 7th at one of his worst tracks statistically, and then 10th for Chase Elliott. But there were a lot of mistakes too. Speeding on pit road cost Ty Dillon a possible top 5, top 10. We were talking about a realistic world where the rapture was about to happen because Ty freaking Dillon was going to get a top 5 in this race. The team had done it perfectly. Had the race went green. They saved both sets of their tires for the option tires. They had it set for the long run. They went in early to try and kind of undercut a lot of the guys in the tire strategy, or were going to at least. And it just ultimately didn't pay off for him. That happens too. Kyle Busch with another top 10 finish. And he shouldn't have finished 8th. He probably should have finished higher. He was competing for a top 5 towards the end of this race. Yes, praise Ty Dillon. But Kyle Busch looking pretty good so far in the last 2 races. Of course, we can talk about super speedways, all that. I picked Kyle Busch to make the playoffs this year. I thought the team had gotten a lot better towards the end of last year at a lot of the intermediates. Look at Michigan, look at Kansas, for instance, running for the win in both of those races. Is he back? No, this is not the old Kyle Busch. I mean, if we're asking if he's back, we've lowered the expectations to where they should be right now. But this is where I think Kyle Busch, with his level of talent and getting decent enough cars, this is where he should be running. These are the baby steps back to real competitiveness for him. He was running in the 20s and 30s in a lot of races last year, and he very well is probably going to in the next couple. I would not be surprised if Kyle Busch runs 34th all day at Martinsville, just because that 8 team just does not have it figured out in any way. It seems like it's either they're up front or they're not, and that could happen. But having these races that last year he would spin out at the end of, last year he would have issues or get crashed out at the end of, or last year he'd have cautions fall at the absolute worst possible times, and they still not very good and still salvage a top 5, top 10 finish. That's what he has to do. These are the races that'll pay off in July and August if he hasn't won a race still, which I still think he can win a race. Great point from Bill here. I mean, Kyle Busch is digging harder right now than he's seen in a few years, and then I think a lot of us have seen in a few years. I think a lot of the talk around him struggling, I think that has pissed him off. And I think he is somebody that has a chip on his shoulder again. And for the longest time early in his career, Kyle Busch was a guy with a chip on his shoulder. So I'm not underestimating him until he is running like 2016 Tony Stewart, 2017 Dale Jr., 2018 and on Jimmy Johnson, and more like 2019-20 Jimmy Johnson. Until he's running that bad consistently for years on end, I'm not counting him out. The age cliff comes for everybody. I don't think he will ever be a championship contending driver again. But can he be a top 10 driver again? Can he be a guy with the way this system or whatever system they have after this year happens, sneak into the round of 8 and then anything can happen? Yeah, why not? I still think he can be. Is he going to win 5, 6, 7 races in a year again? No, he's never going to do that. I think at most he'll win 2 in a year, maybe 3 if he, if luck goes his way or he gets to a better team. But these are the steps. And with how even NASCAR is nowadays, you don't need to win 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 races in a season to win the championship or be competitive in that way, or at least be in the conversation with 4 races remaining. Because to me, it's like, unless you make the Final Four, you're really not a championship contender. You can't grade the whole year really to that point just yet. listen, there's a lot to look at with him and a lot of others. And I think there's a lot to look at all up and down this finishing order. I mean, this race looked amazingly set up for Spire. All three of their drivers in the top 10 to qualify for this thing. McDowell has his issues. Haley and Hocevar get caught up in a crash. I still think that Spire is going to be a team that's going to be on that cut line and battling during the summer as well. I think we're going to see a lot of those guys up there. But at the same time, you're going to see them run mid-pack in a lot of races too. That's just the ebb and the flow of these mid-pack teams. I mean, yeah, you don't really have to win all that much to win it at times, just at the right time. So there is a lot to go over. Looking kind of at some of the other big points of this race, I will let you know about the stages here. Stage 1 was Byron Reddick Preece, who came up from 33rd or something crazy like that on the restart to 3rd in the first stage. And it was only a 60-lap stage. That restart was on lap 13, so it was about a 47-lap run. Great for him and that team to gain some spots in the standings early and position themselves. The way I view the standings early and the why I'm talking about it right now more than I might have in years past is because I never could articulate this. But it's kind of like what Kevin Harvick was saying about restarts. Everyone's all bunched up, 4 and 5 wide. They make mistakes. You can get a lot of people all at once. That's how the start of the year to me is points wise. So that's why I'm talking a bit more about it this year than I would others. Bell 4th in the stage, 5th for Blaney, Barry, Hocevar, Hamlin, Elliott, and Larson, the top 10. Again, a lot of these guys who struggled at the end got good stage points days today. I mean, Reddick had 9 in the first stage and 6 in the second. Preece, even though he finished 15th, 8 stage points in the first stage. Did he get any in the second? No, he did not. Blaney, 6 in the first stage and 7 in the second. Hocevar, 4 in the first. Barry had a pretty good day. You know, you look at this, looking at the second one, you had Bell, Logano again, getting some good points there too, that he is desperately going to need. Byron, Blaney, Reddick, Hamlin, Cindric, Suarez, another one there, Larson, and of course, you know, Barry there in 10th. So a lot of people maximized what they could with the day. And that's what I like about a lot of NASCAR races. You see it a lot at Darlington, though the racing actually matches up with the strategy side of it, but you've seen it at a lot of the 1.5-mile tracks. Strategy races can be fun if there's just stuff lining up in the right ways, whether it's lining up a caution to fly at the right time, so people on the fuel mileage side of it, whether it's lining up so that somebody can last long enough on a set of tires to have an advantage on another run. And I thought that's what we had today. You know, I mean, looking at the poll on the community tab, seemed like a majority of the people thought the same thing. I'm genuinely surprised after some of the back and forth I've seen a lot of you guys saying. But I'm with Walker King here. I think it was a good race. I do. I think, you know, if you're voting on the Jeff Gluck poll, I think it was a good race. I think good race will probably have about 76%, give or take, on that. You know, of course, there were some other things today. The Fox coverage, we can always talk about that. The commercials, we knew FS1 was going to have more of them than Fox races were, just because, you know, they had made a big effort, just like NBC did, to make big Fox races more palatable to the wider audience coming in, and then they'll have to pay more for the cable side of it. It was rough, though. It felt, maybe it's because we've been kind of spoiled the last 3 weeks, but it felt like there were more than usual. The coverage itself, not much any better, I would say. You know, I think that it's Fox. I mean, the booth has no chemistry, and the camera angles aren't the greatest. It was nothing terrible production wise, too much. I saw at one point Cody Ware is they come back from commercial. Cody Ware is sitting on pit road, just stopped, and there's a tire just laying next to him, and they never addressed it. I'm assuming either it came loose while he was on the track, or they didn't get it tight in the pits and it came off, or something like that. But I would have appreciated they talked about that. I'll say this, even with all the issues they had, and by the way, I heard about those in the Atlanta and the Georgia area for the CW, like having it just go to commercial with one to go. Take the local affiliates and channel stuff out that, like CW coverage would have covered that regardless of if it was Christopher Bell, Cody Ware, or anybody else in between. So it was rough. That's Fox. This is what we're gonna have to deal with until like through the All-Star race and then through 2031. That wonderful, wonderful feeling that I'm gonna be in my 30s still talking about the same damn thing. Oh boy, wonderful, wonderful. I mean, looking through though, Blaney blew up right at the end. He had talked about his car being down on power, ends the streak, but still, I mean, for his standards, running 10th at Phoenix is basically like running 25th. I don't think that's going to say anything about how they'll be in the fall. Penske always gets better. Cindric, we saw running top 10 in a lot of this race. Logano, we did. Penske still has the power and the speed. I'm wondering if maybe the tire threw him a little bit for a loop, maybe, because Blaney really was never all that competitive all day. I think the best I saw him get up to was third today. I maybe it threw him for a loop, but they're generally better in the fall than they are in the spring. Usually spring is when Toyota and maybe even Hendrick comes up there. Blaney was the lone exception for a while, but we saw how that ended out for him. But yeah, Bell 3 in a row, man. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I made a video this week about every driver that's won 4 in a row in the modern era. There's 8 of them. So if you haven't seen that, check it out after this. But let's look at some of the super chats that you guys left. I guess this will be our super chat stage break. Couple that were from before we went live. One from Groovy Goose for the 5 saying, between one station that cuts off the finish and the other one that cuts off the full screen commercials during green, NASCAR can't win, can we? NASCAR fans can't win, can we? No, we can't. When the coverage is good, the affiliates and the channel itself is bad. It's just part of what we've run into with it. Unfortunately, this is what we're going to be dealing with as NASCAR fans, with the Fox side of it, at least. Again, it's why, even though with all of the questions people have of it, I'm very interested in what Prime and Turner with TNT can do. I'm very interested in what they can do this year, because I really do think it's going to, in a lot of ways, coverage wise, be really great. It's a matter of if the fans can adapt to it. Chris for the 2 says, make Phoenix a drafting track and give me old Atlanta. I think it's going to be a bit of an issue, Chris. We might have to remove Rattlesnake Hill to make it big enough to do that, because no mile track is going to be a drafting track unless it's like a slot car track. SK Ables for the 2 says, Fox is wrong. Larson was the last to win 3 in a row. Yeah, they kept saying Kevin Harvick was. And I don't know if they meant it like he was the last one to start the season with the 2nd through 4th races won in a row, because I guess that's true. If not, if that was the case, because I believe he did do that in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. If that was the case of what they were trying to talk about, they communicated it poorly. Mike Joy also saying it was the closest Phoenix finish ever. I'm like, no, I remember Mike calling that, because Kevin in the booth won that race over Carl Edwards, and it was an awesome, awesome finish. So, there is that to talk about too, but that's just Fox being Fox. Reverend Rasheem Hall Stewart with the 2 says, which version of Phoenix do you prefer? The old one, pre 2011 fall Phoenix, like basically spring 2011 on back from when I started watching. That was my preferred one. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible. Though the cars, I think, were better set up for it. SW with the 5 says, that was a pretty painful race overall, but hey, what do I expect from Phoenix? The ending is the only entertainment I had. I feel for you, man, because I thought the strategy side of it and the tire side of it is actually pretty good today, all things considered. Could the racing have been better? Heck yeah, it's Phoenix. But I honestly didn't think it was as bad as some people thought it was. Andrew Winslow with the 22-month member chat is Sal here, says, Leg, Herbst, and Lights are the big loser nominees. I guess we could have that as a poll. Biggest loser. Not let's see, not lower. Loser. I guess we could have that be the option. Let me put those in. We'll put another poll up in the chat. Herbst. I can't spell to save my life. I apologize, but poll is up. So go for it. Bobby Blair with the five. Yes, sorry, my bad. C-Bell's the man right now. Great guy, great driver. Christopher Bell is pretty good, dude. I haven't had that many opportunities to be able to talk to him. I'm sure David Bell, wherever you are, David Bell, I'm sure you're having a great time with Christopher doing so well to start the year. But every interaction I've had with him has been really good, and he seems to be somebody who can actually long-term fill that leadership role in NASCAR, in the garage. And that's something that I think that a lot of people maybe in the garage have known about for a while, but a lot of us outside of it have been like, who's that new leader going to be in this generation? Who's going to take the mantle? And it looks like it's going to be Bell, performance-wise so far this year, but also leadership-wise. If you've heard anything about what he's been saying off the track, especially with the playoff group that Ben Kennedy and co have put together. So Chris here with the 5 says best Phoenix possible. Night race with the Xfinity Series car and Cup race 2-tire strategy with a Truck Series length duration. I don't know. Phoenix is already kind of a short enough race as is. 3 to 3.5 hours is okay. I think the what's the not theory, but the movement for many that wanted to drastically reduce a lot of the even 400 milers or 500K races, I think has went down in recent years, even from how low it probably was before. I think the ones that needed to have been, I think it's fine as is, but nothing's going to make Phoenix a great track. I think we all need to accept that. Carl Singleton with the 5 says Christopher Bell's NBA counterpart, in my opinion, is Trae Young. Interestingly, they both grew up in Oklahoma in the early 2000s. I don't know anything about modern NBA basketball at all, so I'll take your word for it. Steven Gibson for the 5 here says Phoenix needs to be late spring under the lights and one date. Worst track on the NASCAR schedule. Race brought the season to a standstill today. I disagree that it was an awful race, and I think I've been pretty clear on that, but I do agree with you. This track does not deserve 2 dates. I think you could probably build about 20,000 more seats in the grandstands, and the people would show up for it if you had one race a year. Look at Texas, for instance. That race, I think, could, with how well they promoted it, going to one date in an area of the season that it's not hot as hell for the fans, has made that track actually grow in attendance. I think last year, let me check. I had gotten the numbers from somebody more in the know than me, and I can look at them really quick if I have my packet here on me. Last year at Texas had like close to 76,000 roughly. Give or take, because I think it can hold about 80 or so thousand now. I mean, it was pretty packed from all the people I knew that were there and just seeing it on TV. Phoenix, I think, could have the same thing. They could have a higher attendance number, I think, if they had one date, and it could go then that date, whether it's a championship race or just a race that they move Phoenix's second date one way or another somewhere in the schedule, could go to a much more deserving and better racing track overall. My theory is Phoenix will go to one date for a few years, and they'll use that race in the spring for the San Diego street race, because I think they're more substituting ISC races in the part of the country they're having a street race. So that could be what happens. But I do think, too, it is probably one of the worst on the schedule. I don't think night racing would fix it, though, just because then you'd have probably less tire fall off. Steven with the 2 says option made this race good. Fox made it unwatchable. 'Tis the tale of Fox Sports since 2017-16 era. Marky Mark with the 5 says someone tell Jonathan Hassler that whatever's cooking underneath the 12's hood is done cooking. Yeah, done exploded and blowed up. Captain Ford Guns with the 10 here says the race seemed pretty good from what I caught. Kicking myself, though, because on my podcast I mentioned Bell could win 3, but chose Logano instead. Also, the third race in a row that Brad has crashed out. Yeah, Brad Keselowski with a no good, very bad start to the season as well. I mean, I don't blame you for picking a Penske car. Doesn't matter if it's early in the season or later. Penske is so strong here. Historical data with this car would show it's smart to pick Penske. It's why two of the four people picking on the NWP, which you can catch this Wednesday on my channel here, pick Penske cars. And the other two pick Gibbs cars. Best of the best out there. Let's see. Suede here says, hard for me to see how Phoenix gets much better than that. Passing strategy, different guys running up front and finish. Option tires are how many other motorsports operate otherwise. Anyways, I should say. I don't know why I can't read. Yeah, I mean, again, I was kind of against it for a while, but seeing it ran in proof of concept won me over with it, no problem. When it came to the option tires, I don't think you can get much better than that. Like, if you didn't like it, I don't think you're going to like a Phoenix race in general, which, you know what? It's not a good track, so I don't blame you. If you're expecting anything better than that and you liked it, temper the expectations. Z06 Paul with the 2 says option tires should be everywhere. Not everywhere, but the tracks that probably need it the most. Maybe like a New Hampshire, Bristol, maybe that would help out a little bit too. Because again, last year's race was an anomaly. But I'd be cool seeing it at more places, especially if, don't mess with the intermediates until it needs to be messed with. I think that the 1.5 miles, 2 mile tracks, no problem. They're fine. But any tracks that might need it, I'd be open to it. Like maybe Dover. Dover might be one if they're able to hit that, kind of window. Marky Mark with the 5 says, Gibbs finishing races like my Thunder 03's career mode. Yeah, like the start of it, where you have the worst car in the field and you're just hoping you finish 40th. Tyler McGonigal, good to see you, man. For the 2 says, I'm going to eat my ice cream in sorrow now. Hey, man, I mean, he came back and still had a pretty good run. Probably should have finished top 3. Definitely the best of the Hendrick cars out there, William Byron. I know you're a Byron fan. But it could have been much worse. I think he is well and set up to have a great year. He's one of the best drivers with this car too. So no worries. Let's see. Alexander here with the 10 says, your partner Danny B mentioned that Reeser's scheme Bell ran looked like the Z-Line Designs car Kyle Busch dominated in for all those years in the Nationwide Series. Fitting Bell won with it today on debut. Yeah, I mean, it does look like that, and Danny was spot on with that assessment. Let's see. Sly Supersonic with the 5 here says, Christopher Bell does it again. He just doesn't get the respect he deserves. The option tire made this race better than it actually was. 7 out of 10. I'd agree. I'd agree on pretty much all of it. I think Christopher Bell, he deserves, I think, about the same amount of respect in the NASCAR circles that Kyle Larson is getting. He is talent-wise right up there with them, and I don't see why, other than him being in a Toyota and his personality being a lot more tempered down, why people don't kind of raise him up, I mean, let me know in the chat, what career win was that for Bell? I mean, I can probably check. It's probably like 13 or something like that, or 12. Pretty good still with how even the field is. I know, like, as soon as I look for it, 12. Okay, 12. So, yeah, I mean, he's moving up there. I have all of the NASCAR wins lists on my phone. I mean, he's the only driver right now with 12 all time. Whenever he wins one more, as long as the active driver there doesn't, ahead of him, he will tie Ryan Blaney, Dick Rathman, and Tim Richmond. William Byron only has 2 more than him. And at this point now, Chase Elliott only has 7 more than him. Don't get me wrong, he's not going to pass Chase Elliott this year. I don't think he's going to have 12, 11, 13, whatever win season. He's not the second coming of 1998 Jeff Gordon, but he's still pretty damn good. U.S. Forest Service Sasquatch Department for the 5. Well, good to see that our tax dollars are very much being used for the good purposes that I want them to be. Find Sasquatch for me. He says, for the 5 here, though, Bell gets 10 wins this season and is the championship favorite as of now. I'm not going to say 10. This car is so even. Yes, getting these wins early on will help. But I mean, you look at, if we're talking about the schedule, look at the schedule as well when it comes to the playoffs, and they are perfect for him. Darlington, Gateway, and Bristol. I mean, Gateway immediately you got to look at. He probably would have been, he's going to be probably top 3 in that one in September. New Hampshire, Kansas, Charlotte, Roval. He's good at all of those. Las Vegas, Talladega, Martinsville. He's good at the 2 around Talladega. Just survive Dega. He'll be fine with the amount of points he's accruing, and then back to Phoenix again. Yeah, it's a very good argument. It's just the way the system is, you really don't know until you get basically to the end of the round of 8 who's actually a favorite or not. But I'll say this: I think he'll be one of the top 3 all year. If there's a big 3, he'll be in it, and he'll probably be leading it. And then Jacob here with the 5, I think it's the last one here, says 5 out of 6 races this year, including the exhibition, Keselowski's been taken out and is not showing much speed. Thoughts? Well, I'll say this when it comes to the speed part of it. I predicted Brad Keselowski to miss the playoffs this year. I did not like what I saw at the end of last year. I did not really like what I saw pretty much after Darlington from that 6 team, just not consistent at all. And I kind of, the way I thought is if they got off to a really bad start to the year, like when you look right here under me, a 33rd place finish, not something that's going to be very easy to dig yourself out of the hole with. I mean, I don't have the current points on me, but Brad Keselowski coming in today was 26, 28 points out of the cut line. And a lot of the guys behind him had solid days. So Keselowski's, at least, let's see, Keselowski's 33rd now. That's going to be tough to dig yourself out of. I don't care how good you are. And I don't think those RFK Fords, I think they're good enough that if somebody like Buescher gets a good start or Priest gets up into the mix, they can stay up in the mix or get ahead of it. But I don't think if you're falling way behind and you're like 35, 40 points back with new winners, I don't know if that's something you can come back from. I really don't. But we got a lot of stuff to talk about this week, so be sure to subscribe if you're new. I think we're closing in on 85K. I have not been keeping track of any of that. Yeah, we're like less than 20 away. So anyone who's new, be sure to subscribe. We do this after every race. We'll do it next week after the Trucks Xfinity Cup. We do it after all of those. We're going to be live this Wednesday on this channel for NWP with Eric Estep and Danny B Talks. We're announcing our first guests of the month coming on, a few returning guests. We're also working on some new ones, so don't miss it because we're going to announce it there. But thank you guys so much for coming on in. I appreciate it a ton. And you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Have a good one. See you this week. And